Welcome to the Talking with the School of Transportation podcast with your hosts, Ian Campbell and Harnek and Ian. Let's get into it now.
Welcome to the Talking with the School of Transportation podcast presented by Centennial College. I'm Ian Campbell, and as always, I'm here with Harnek and Ian.
Hello, folks, and welcome back. Today we are joined by Alan McClelland and Garrett Nalepka, and we're going to discuss TARGA.
Yeah, TARGA. What is TARGA?
TARGA is probably one of the most underrated rally races in North America. It is just absolutely incredible. So basically, it takes place in all of eastern Newfoundland. And how it works is there are timed sessions for the vehicles. And so, for example, we have something called a transit, which the vehicle has to drive on normal provincial roads, and all road rules apply. They'll drive on their own
speed.
Even speed.
Oh, wow.
So they have to drive to these time sessions. And so, for example, it could be a day with sleet and rain and everything else. So you can't just take an all-out race car with slicks because you won't make it very far. And there's a lot of rules, like you have to use the same, you can use up to 6 tires, but they have to be the same tires you're using all week. So if it snows, you're on those tires. So I don't know.
6 of the same tires?
Or six tires total.
Okay.
6 tires, 5 wheels. So you're allowed 5 rims, 6 tires, and you've got to make it through the whole week on Newfoundland's roads.
Wow. That's cool.
And so you drive to these time sessions, and basically they'll time the car entering the session and how long it actually takes to get through the session. And they'll have a proposed time for that session. So let's say it takes a normal car 5 minutes exactly. And if you take longer than that, then whatever the time that it's taking you longer, it stays with you for the rest of the week. So if it took me 5 minutes.
So it's a progressive time?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And so those are minus seconds throughout the week. They also, these time sessions, depending on the car, if they change the speed limit of the actual in time session. So those are closed roads during the actual sessions, and are real road race cars with roll cages and whatnot. You're allowed to go 200 kilometers an hour on these public roads that are closed during the sessions.
So what's Centennial College's involvement in TARGA?
Centennial College has been involved for many years. So we've been going since 2014 to the different sessions. We've come back with just a lot of hardware and a lot of podium finishes, first, seconds, very, very successful race team. And the college has always brought students with us to actually work on the actual race vehicles. And so we've supported up to 6 vehicles in particular calendar years. So we've been involved for a great many years, and, coming back with several podiums, including this year as well. So.
Yeah, this year was a pretty good podium. What did you think, Alan?
Yeah, this was the first year back, so TARGA had a few years off. Certainly the pandemic put a damper on things for a while. But this year, Hugh Media, they only put 2 vehicles in, and one was in the class called Fast Tour, where you're just kind of going for the fun of it, and you get to drive. You're not really scoring points. You're not really going for any medals, but you're going to finish and just make it through the week. And so, as Garrett stated, you've got to be able to make all of the time stages, and you've also got to make all of the transits around, which means that any malfunctions, any breakdowns, you got to get things going quick to make it to the next one. And so one of them went through Fast Tour, and we had one of the drivers that's been with us lots. Hugh Media is the team we support, and John Jr. Was trying out a new car this year. So he was driving a Mini GP, a relatively new one. And John Sr.'s car, which was another GP, a slightly older one, that one came first in its class. And we had a professional race car driver that was a bit of a ringer that came in and drove the majority of that one. And John Sr. drove some of the legs. But John Sr. and John Jr. have won and placed first and second many times.
Awesome. So how does a student get involved with this? And what would their role be?
Well, before that, how many students did you take? And could you want to talk about them a little bit?
This year we did take 4 students to try and give the students an opportunity. And it's over a bunch of different programs. So basically we took 2 students from our 8226 FCA TADA program, 1 international, and 1 from our 8202 motive power program.
So who were these folks?
We had Zaffer, who was from 8226. We had Philip, who was from 8226. And then we had Juan, who was from 8202. And we had Eric from 8202. And so we had a really just great dynamics between the group. But I've been with you, Garrett, this is my 3rd one, I think. And I don't think we've ever had a bad group that I've been involved with. Our students are fantastic. And so we leave it up to the faculty to determine who's going to come from from the programs, because it's really important. At TARGA, where it's a live event, there's lots going on, it's busy, you've got lots and lots of places that we're going and staying in different hotels in different places, up early each morning, working late each night. So I think really the work ethic, the attitude are probably just as important, if not more important, than their technical skills. So they're not selected based on grades. They're really selected based on how they perform in the program. And so the faculty from both programs, they talk to the students they think would be good fits, and then select them from there.
Yeah. So they're basically, I have criteria that I send out to their teachers, and what I've written is most likely to volunteer, most likely to be involved in extracurricular activities, most likely to be active in a lab and participating. And grades are a secondary factor, but we look for attendance. Do they show up on time? And
character. And you forgot the most important thing: able to wake up early, really early in the morning, without any prompting or prodding.
Absolutely.
That rules out a lot of our
you're going to lose a
right
few
now.
folks there.
But you know what? It's really touching because some of the faculty, I've received almost full-page letters recommending the students, and some of the people you wouldn't even think. And this would go out to the faculty. Obviously, some of the students may not know exactly who these individuals are, but for example, Rick Wu has sent me a big page-long letter about why a certain student should go. Dave Weatherhead has, and Catherine as well. So Mary Green, Christy Bain, all these professors have gone out of their way to highly recommend students for the TARGA program.
That's great. Yeah. Yeah, I had Philip and Zaf from the 8226 program, and great guys and character guys, right? And I think you need that. So what do they get into? What do the students get into? And you guys, because we just had a podcast with Alan, the Getting to Know series, and he mentioned getting into the wrenches and getting on the cars. And what did you get into? What were some challenges or things that you did?
Well, one of the big things before we get into that, I want to kind of lay the ground rules of what we're trying to accomplish.
Okay.
So during the day, the cars are so busy that in the timing, we just don't have time to actually do real, proper fixes. So throughout the day, you're patching, you're taping, you're zip tying, you're trying to keep everything going so you can get through all the time stages. And it's at the end of the day, after all the sessions are done, then now we're going over the vehicles and you're trying to fix things properly. And I could give you a true world example. One of the minis hit a large bump, and the rear view mirror on the glass, the clips let go, and basically it's in line. There's 4 cars ahead. It's ready to launch, and it's opportunity to actually be in the time session, and they're not going to wait for us. So all we did was take 2 large strips of duct tape, because there's wiring to the mirror, as a lot of us know, and the actual connector is underneath a panel. We can't actually get to it. So we're duct taping like crazy to the inside glass of the windshield, and we're watching the cars ahead. They're like, okay, you go. And now it's your turn. And now we're the next. I have 2 students out of the car still taping the mirror up. And basically, just as we're closing the door, the gentleman's putting his hand down saying it's your turn to actually launch the car. So that gives you an idea, or, a sense of what's happening. The other thing is a lot of ripped wheel wells, especially not just this time, but over the years. I've gotten really good at poking holes and using zip ties to sew up bumpers.
Stitch up,
we're doing a lot of stitching and a lot of different things. We had air deflectors get ripped out of place. And again, you're kind of getting a sense of all the patching that we're trying to do and keep the cars together. And so one of the things that wasn't mentioned, if a car makes every timed stage, okay, and it just makes it through, and we're not talking about actually achieves the time, it could lose time, but actually makes it through every time stage, they'll actually earn a plate. Okay, so it's not just the trophies. It's not.
What do you mean by a plate?
So for being able to actually complete everything, you're saying?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So if you missed a stage, you got lost, the car couldn't actually get through the actual stage, then you lose that plate. And so they're not just going for
the plate is an award.
It's an award,
Okay.
but it actually is a physical silver
Gotcha.
plate.
Okay. Yeah.
I've got one in my office I can show you, because John Hume Sr., he had some made up for the service crew one
Awesome.
year. And so they're the same as what the drivers would get, because
Cool.
he thought, you know what, the service crew deserves a plate too for keeping these cars going. And so he's given us each one.
That's
Yeah.
really cool.
That particular year Alan's talking about, there was some challenges that year, and there were 4 cars, and we made it so all 4 would complete. And basically some of the repairs were with very little time to spare. And that's exactly what Alan was saying, that you guys really deserve your own plate, because that's the only reason these cars were able to hit all the stages.
Yeah, we had one car that year was a BMW M3. It was, I think, a 2002 M3. And so that car threw an accessory drive belt halfway through the stage. And so there was no water pump. There was no power steering. The driver made it through with just muscle. And then at the end, they had another stage that was going to run probably about 20 minutes after that. And so we had to change the power or the accessory drive belt right on the side of the road with an engine that was overheated.
Yeah.
And so sometimes you just gotta do what you have to do. Hacksaw to cut off the AC belt, get the stuff apart as fast as possible, get it back together, and get them going. This year we had one that was, we checked tire pressures at the end of each run. And this year we had one of the minis came in off, and it was before a transit to another stage. And this one came in off, told us everything was fine. We checked the tire pressures. One of them was about 5 PSI low. So we thought, you know what? That's strange. Let's check them again. This time it was 7 PSI low. And so that's it. Driver didn't even get out, just jacked him up, grabbed the spare, had the tire off, had another one on, and on their way. So you've got to, if we hadn't done that and hadn't checked that, because he wanted to go, and we just said, no, we've got to really look at this, and found the leak, he'd have been stranded on the road and wouldn't have made his next run.
Now, have there been repairs where you were not able to MacGyver something to make it work?
I can think of one.
Oh, well,
The pancaked wheel. That was one.
Yeah.
The pancaked wheel. That's a good episode title.
Yeah, the TARGA, the pancaked wheel.
They already had in this one, and this was several years ago, and this was one where the vehicle, like, they're in some cases doing 140, 150 kilometers an hour on a road that's got huge potholes, and sometimes if they don't see that pothole or can't get around it, so we already had some suspension damage. And then at the start for another stage, we reset the toe, but we couldn't fix the camber. They had some bent suspension components, but figured they'd just make it through the week to finish. And that one, they took air off the start and came down on the side, the front corner with the bent suspension, and it just let go. It broke, and that one there was done at that point. And I think we had an engine malfunction, blew a hole in a piston one year as well.
Yeah.
And that one there, again, it was in between stages, sounded awful. There was oil everywhere. And it was under the hood through the PCV system. And we ended up pulling the spark plugs, checking compression, and found one cylinder with no compression. And not much we could do with that one.
Yeah, we've had some big failures, but we've also, I must say, the Centennial College students, they've really kept the cars going for the most part. And I could think of some years, if I go back in time, and the one thing, Hugh Media prides themselves on keeping these cars in great shape. And I'll never forget, we had one of the supercharged Mini Coopers. They ended up getting too close to a rock wall and ended up smashing the actual fender into the tire, blowing the tire out the 1 year. And so the students are watching, and I had basically we had some of the people help us. I walked up to one of the locals' garages, and I took a baseball bat out of the actual garage, and we lifted the suspension up and used the baseball bat to roll the car back and forth and rock the fender out and put a new tire on, and away they went. And it's funny to watch the owner's face, because some of these cars were his pride and joy, and we're sitting there just trying to get. Yeah,
I will say a lot of our students will be really good with that bat and rolling fenders, though. They do that a fair bit right now.
And we've had instances where there's been a part that's needed, and they've limped along until the part came. I can think of a mass airflow sensor one year that they flew it in from Toronto, then in a taxi ran it up to where we were. And it was a fuel control problem, and the driver of the car with the bad mass airflow sensor was just told to keep it above 4,000 RPM, and so just run it in the gear lower than you're normally running it.
And hopefully there's no hole in this piston
and
too.
It'll have, and it ran all right, and then we got the sensor in and got it going, and
That's fun.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's fun. Do you have a specific moment from this specific one that really hit home, or was a real cool experience for you? Is there a specific moment that you remember from this one?
I'd say collectively having Randy Post as a driver. So anybody who's in the racing field basically would know who Randy is. He's got his own YouTube channel and whatnot. So he's pretty big in the actual racing world. So he was our celebrity driver for our team, and our team usually does pretty well without a shoe in. But it was kind of nice to see have some expert talent on the actual team and see what he could do.
Very cool. How about you, Alan?
I think there's two. And the two are probably the students helping out another team.
Okay.
And so we had two instances I can think of. We had one which was a Subaru Outback wagon. someone who's a regular TARGA competitor was in. And he had a parking brake malfunction that jammed up his parking brake on the back wheels. And so it was just right after lunch. We came in for lunch. He said, "I've got a problem. Can you have a look at our car?" And just on the side of the road, everyone else had left. We jacked up his car, pulled it apart, took all the parking brake components out, cut the cable, put it back together, and he made it in time for the next run. And
Awesome.
so he had no parking brake after that, but at the end of the day, he was able to finish the event, and that was good. And then we had another instance where we were in a little harbor in the middle of nowhere, and a BMW 325 came in with an overheated engine, and so we were able to let it cool down, get him bled, figured out that his cooling fan was not working and was binding, so he needed a new fan. And he was able to get back out into town, get another fan off of another vehicle, and MacGyvered it so that he was able to run the next day. And so at the end, just getting him going with the bottles of water we had for drinking in our van, and then pushing him up onto a hill so we could bleed his engine for him students are just great. We ended up getting acknowledged with a Spirit of TARGA award, because I think between us all, we figured we helped out about 6 other teams throughout the week.
That's great.
Yeah, including the second place car.
Oh, you're helping the competitor.
We certainly did.
Yeah.
Now, the team had a little bit of history with the actual competitor that was in second, because at subsequent years he was a navigator in one of the Hue Media cars.
Okay.
But we did one night go well out of our way. The camber was set up too aggressively in the rear. He actually burnt out 2 rear tires.
Oh, wow.
And
So that's a big, based on what you said earlier, that's a big deal for this. Yeah.
So we ended up 10 o'clock at night. We call a local garage in Newfoundland and start talking to the shop owner. And surprisingly, I can't even believe that somebody's there and answered. But the answer, we say, we're from TARGA. We're kind of stuck. The camber's been set up too aggressively, and we've already put 2 new tires. Some other teammates helped us. They brought some tires over. They basically, we had them installed installed them ourselves using a dealership machine, and now we're stuck with the alignment. We had our students, they allowed us to use this shop. I used a Jim Beam alignment rack that was probably from the 90s. And it worked like a charm. We basically helped them out, set the camber up a little less aggressively. And this usually, I must say, to help another car that's competing so close to us in the same class, you kind of bite your tongue a little bit, because you always feel like at the end of the week that could really come back to bite you. But we did. And I'm not sure, Alan, if you even know, but we only ended up winning by 4 seconds by the end of the week. So
doesn't it make it that much sweeter though? Because you still were able to help and you still won.
You still got the win.
Yeah.
And the most amazing thing to me is that the owner of this shop took off to run some errands and says, "I'll be back to lock up when you're done." So there's
amazing.
the tools, whatever you need, just make yourselves at home.
Yeah.
And there's nowhere else but in Newfoundland would that happen.
Yeah.
In fact, that was in the town of Gander, which is where Come From Away took place. And so that just shows you just the hospitality and nature of Newfoundlanders.
And what an experience for our students to be able to go into a shop that, like, so far away from normal to us, really, and have that experience. I think there's probably a highlight in their minds too. So
it's one of the things that it starts to really hit home, where you're trying to figure out exactly where you are. You'll drive for 4 hours. You won't see any drive-through, any restaurants at all. And then when you finally get to a small town, you realize the shop, whatever it is their convenience supermarket. It sells wiper blades, auto parts, plumbing, whatever it is. And the selection, you go in, you're like, oh, this is the fruit section. There's 3 bananas. And here's chips. There's 2 flavors, so it's much different than Toronto and all the things that we're used to. The locals are used to helping each other. So it's just one of these things where if somebody's in need, they're going to help them. And even when visitors come, it's the same thing. We've always had the locals help us to keep on going.
That's amazing, and what you guys can do for the students. And I think we'll end with that. But we have 2 questions for our guest. Garrett's a repeat offender, so maybe he doesn't get these, but you also have some housekeeping that you want to do.
I definitely do.
So Alan, we have 2 questions for you, and then you're free to go. But the 2 questions are:
so if you had any vehicle for a day, and keep in mind this doesn't have to be a car, it could be an airplane, it could be a boat, it could be a tank, it could be anything. What would it be?
With me, it would be a Bombardier Global 7500, which is the most expensive, most luxurious business jet in the world. We have one of them at Downsview. They're worth about $70 million Canadian.
Okay.
And it can fly more than halfway around the world. So you can go anywhere you want without having to stop to refuel.
Wow.
And if I had one of those, that would be pretty cool.
All right.
Where would you go with it?
I'd have to find somewhere exotic, probably in the South Pacific.
That's awesome. That's probably the most expensive vehicle we've had yet.
What about your fighter jet? I think that's pretty up there too.
I chose the Top Gun F-16 fighter jet for a day. And I think yours might be a bit more expensive based on, especially the year I picked, because that's 1980s tech, but yeah.
Yeah, if it was an F-35, the new Lockheed Martins, then I think you'd have me beat.
Yeah. Cool. And then the last thing, if you could pick somebody to walk in their shoes for one day, dead or alive, whatever be, anybody in the world, fictional or non, who would you choose?
That's a tough question. Oh my gosh, who would I pick? Oh boy. So walk in their shoes, it would probably be if I went to car racing, it would probably Carroll Shelby.
Oh,
Okay.
What a good answer. What a good answer.
I like that.
Yeah, Ford versus Ferrari, isn't
Yeah.
that? That whole thing.
Yeah, that's
What a
definitely-
great answer.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. The students picked something similar as well. I think we had a student who wanted to be
An F1 racer.
An F1
Sienna.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. Great.
And just so you know, because I listened to all these,
Okay.
I still gonna want my McLaren, and I will take Mary on as she challenged me.
All right. There's going to be a race. Anybody want to sponsor 2 McLarens, please?
We'll need 8 students for the pit crew.
Yeah. That'll be awesome. That'll be awesome. What a treat to have Alan and Garrett on, both talking about Targa. We still have Garrett on here because he's got a little bit of a
Gripe.
not a gripe. He doesn't have a gripe. He is one of our faithful listeners. He's listened to everything so far.
Yeah, and it's been great to listen to you two evolve, and the context. I do enjoy listening to you two and all the different topics that you're coming up with.
Yeah, and the last one we had on, the last one out right now, although there may be more before this one comes out, is the students. We had 2 students on, and we're just giving some perspective on everything. And you had some feedback on that.
I did enjoy the episode with Jacob and Madison. It was I thought it was great to actually listen to the students as they're going through our programs, and they seem quite open and willing to talk and give criticism about the actual programs. The one thing I can say is, while I was driving home, my background is transmission rebuilding.
Mm-hmm.
I was actually a transmission rebuilder for 10 years before I even got into anything mechanical, and that was at a dealership. And at one point in time, your conversation went into replacing things as modules and talking about transmissions. And I did like what you two were talking about, where you said you need to take it apart to learn how to diagnose it. But I did want to take an opportunity to share one of my stories where I just basically, for me, it was a learning moment. And if I go back in time for my job as a transmission rebuilder, and it was a Chrysler dealership, and Daimler had just merged with Chrysler.
So this is early 2000s, just for context, and to point out how old you are.
Mid 2000, 2005, somewhere around there. And then basically, what had ended up happening is we were using a lot of the Mercedes transmissions, and so a lot of the Chrysler techs weren't familiar with these. And they had set up training for them because we were traditionally rebuilding everything. The units were only replaced if it was extreme failure.
Yeah, too far gone.
And I can remember going to the training for the actual NAG one. I sat down. It was a 3-day course, and the instructor basically came to us and said, "These transmissions don't have any failures. They're very good. Mercedes only replaces them as a unit. You're probably not going to have one part ever." And I was like, great. So I'm like, I'm not even going to listen to this.
I get paid to sleep for a few days.
I'm going to tune out. I'm going to have a big lunch, and I'll listen to it. I'll look at it, kind of neat, but I'm not going to be rebuilding this because they're replacing it as a module. They've always replaced it as a module. And I started to get that same perception that your students had. And you're looking at it going, I don't need to know this. Why do I need to know this? I don't have to rebuild it. And to fast forward, we ended up getting some failures with these units. And we didn't know it at the time, but what ended up happening, the AC drain on some of the 300s was positioned right over the transmission dipstick tube. And the dipstick tube seal wasn't very good, and it was filling some of these transmissions with water. And yes, I did replace 1 or 2 as a unit. And then basically we ended up talking to the rep, and they said, we've done a cost-based analysis. We've decided to rebuild everything going forward.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's like, wait a minute.
Promises were made.
So all of a sudden I have something where I didn't listen to the training for. And before I knew it, I had 5 of them waiting to be rebuilt. I went to parts, tried to order a transmission rebuild kit, and they said, oh, the parts have to be ordered individually. So if you want a plate or a seal, whatever it is, you order a seal.
And that's one plate.
Mm-hmm.
And there's probably 7 in a clutch pack. And yeah.
I felt so discouraged and beat because I did not prepare myself. And it's very dangerous to start to think that, oh, these won't be serviced, or rebuilt. And I'm not just talking transmissions. I'm talking about everything on the car. It's a cycle. I've been in the trade long enough. I see it where you end up with a vehicle that doesn't have any failures in a particular component. The manufacturers pay engineers to look at these components and try to find cheaper ways to manufacture them. And they do mess up sometimes. And it is just a cycle for every single component where you start with the components dependable, you end with some cost cutting. All of a sudden the dependability falls off. They look at the warranty claims and they try to fix that component to make it dependable again. And it's a constant cycle for every part on the car. That's why you have your warranty codes when you're actually, putting a repair in for any warranty.
Mm-hmm. That kind of leans to what you were saying too, Harnek, right? With Nick. Hi, Nick.
Hi, Nick.
At the shop rebuilding transmissions now because you.
That's right. There was such a high failure rate with the reman units that were going in. it got to the point where I think he had a Caravan that got 3 units, right? And finally just came down to rebuild it, and that was the way to go.
I know how he feels.
I had 3 units fail on me, but it's the ones I rebuilt. That's how I learned about transmissions. So yeah,
Fourth one's the charm.
That car didn't leave for 3 transmissions, and finally I was like, "That's a seal." Oh,
That's the best way to learn, though.
yeah. I failed 3 times on that one.
Yeah, but you know what? It's the best way to learn.
I agree.
And you can tell somebody something.
Yeah.
But when they have it actually fail on them, or you make a mistake, you never forget your mistake.
Yeah, that's how I started rebuilding transmissions. It was a bucket of parts saying this guy rolled his toolbox out. It's up to you.
Oh,
I was
no.
like, what? Okay.
I've had an engine
We'll
towed
see
in
how
from
that
the
goes.
States once, where
Yeah.
it had one head on, the other head was in the trunk, and
Nice.
all the various parts were also in the trunk.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, towed in from the States.
Well, I love that. I think it brings it back to that whole thing about diagnosis. And even more than that, the more you know what's going inside, the better you are as a technician, the more knowledge you have, the better you can be, the better you could diagnose things and so forth. So I love that little insight that you have. And I agree, the students have a perspective, and they have a very little slice of the pie so far compared to what other techs have seen and those cycles you talk about as things go along. So that's great.
No, good stuff, guys.
All right. Well, I do have a question for you.
Not the McLaren.
No, it's a new one.
Okay.
Yeah. What's your favorite movie?
Oh, I like all the Avengers movies.
Do you?
What?
Yeah.
That's really what you picked? Okay.
Yeah,
I
I'm
did not.
shocked.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was.
I'm shocked.
You're blowing
Yeah,
our minds right now.
I
I thought it was
you know-
like Gone in 60 Seconds
Who's
or
your,
something.
who's your favorite character?
Oh,
Black
you know what?
Widow
Of
for
the
sure.
Avengers.
No,
Black Widow.
no, I like the Iron Man stuff. I
Okay.
like, yep. That's where I'm going.
Okay.
Iron Man?
Yeah.
Iron Man's your
Not
favorite
Captain
character?
America?
Not
No,
even
I-
Hulk or
Captain America, Iron Man.
Who do you most relate to?
Oh boy,
That's Hulk right there. He gets
Yeah.
real mad.
I'd like to say Captain America, but I'm not that guy. I'm not that guy.
Out of all of them,
Yeah.
maybe it might be Cap.
I'd say I'd like to be,
Okay.
but it's not happening.
Yeah, hit the weights a bit.
Yeah.
I've known you for like 15 years, and I don't like.
I'm
I would.
shocked.
My
Yeah.
mind is blown.
I love
the
that
Avengers
too.
movies.
That's great.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
You're
That's
Ant-Man.
great.
I've decided.
I'll take my
Awesome.
superpower.
Awesome. Well, thank you for listening. Thanks, Garrett, for that insight. And thank you, Alan, again, who is not here for the end of this. But thanks for listening. If you have any topics, people that you want to hear from, or ideas for the podcast, please contact us. The email address will be in the description below. And until next time.
And you're going to tell Mary about the McLaren race?
Oh, yeah, we got to book that.
we gotta get that race going.
So if you have 2 McLarens that you don't mind other people driving, please contact us. The email address is in the description below. All right, everybody.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for listening. We'll talk to you next time.
Bye.